Christine D'Epiro Abbott is a Columbus-based fine artist. She creates mixed media pieces with paper and painting. She studied printmaking in Glasgow, Scotland, while finishing her BFA at Columbus College of Art and Design. She has her work in several permanent collections in Columbus, and her work has been displayed nationally for over 10 years. Many of her works display the intimacy of home interiors. And I know some of you have told me that you have seen her work at Phoenix Rising, and that she is a principal artist for that place, which is, I think Jody said, she told me 5th Street downtown, kind of in the Columbus Arts District. So Christine, welcome and thank you for coming, and we would love to hear what you have to say.
Thanks for having me. I'll add to the introduction. I'm actually a Dublin Kaufman alum from 01, so 2001, and a peer of Joe Lombardo too. He graduated a year after me at CCAD. So if you take classes with him, ask him how he met his wife. It's a really cute story. I don't know if anyone saw this. My husband is my technical support and babysitter. So I'm just following the instructions that he gave me, which should be good. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Share. Okay, so anyway, thanks again for inviting me to sharing my work. So I've graduated from CCAD in 2005, and I got my master's degree at Washington University in St. Louis in 08. And really, I've been exhibiting since my undergraduate degree. So at this point, it's over 20 years.
Wow.
And when I put together slides, this was a chance for me to reflect and really hit some of the highlights and kind of highlight some of the thinking process behind my current work and kind of how I got from there to here. And thinking too about things I wish someone would have told me, you know, the things you kind of learn as you go along. That and my other background is teaching and working for art galleries. I worked for dealers for over 10 years and have a perspective from that experience and then from teaching. So my first slide I wanted to share was actually a story I want to tell, not about my work, but more of a highlight when I worked at Brent Roberts Galleries in the Short North. And we worked with this artist, Stuart Fink. So when we worked with Stuart, he had a degenerative nerve issue that caused tremors in his hands, almost like Parkinson's. And as a young person, as a young artist, I guess I never really thought about kind of the longevity of my career and the idea that at some point, you know, I kind of take for granted my ability to create just physically. And what's so inspiring about Stuart is he just continued to plow forward. So his background was doing large public sculptures, and as he had funding, he did bronze sculptures and then drawing, and then he was also working with wood sculpture. And as the tremors progressed, he became kind of more and more limited to what he could do. To when we met him, he was actually drawing with stencils. So he was just doing simple geometric shape with stencils and doing these drawings that in and of themselves were pretty simple. And during my time at the gallery, we had a client of ours who started becoming interested in Stuart's work and collecting his work. He goes down to meet Stuart, and the two of them hit it off. And this is really what I wanted to highlight is when he met him, Stuart was doing these drawings with no anticipation of them ever existing as sculptures in real life. They're intended to be sculptures. And Tom, the collector, worked with laser cut steel. He worked in manufacturing. And so he saw these drawings and thought, well, I could see these, we can make these. And so that's always stuck with me. This idea that really great work manages to find its home in the world, and that you of just plowing forward, and that and then the work came to fruition. Because the other thing with Stuart too is he knew exactly how, so the work was conceptualized two-dimensionally, but he knew exactly how thick to make them so they wouldn't fall over. And as someone who's not a two-dimensional person, that's kind of remarkable. And so they ended up being this like almost sold out show. And it was, like I said, it was really memorable experience for me. And now, kind of fast forward now, mom with 3 kids, limitations affect me a lot more in my studio. So when I started out as a graduate student, I was kind of overwhelmed by possibilities. Both my degrees were general visual arts degrees. I could do whatever media I wanted, any kind of subject matter. And I don't know if you and your studio have had experiences where you found that almost paralyzing, to have too many options. So at one point I came up with this project called 4x4, and I started creating things that were 4 inches by 4 inches. I figured they were in between the size of a Post-it note and a index card, like a single thought. And then I just made a ton. And that's been just finding a simple idea and then making a pile of it is still something that's with me, because sometimes scale is what makes things interesting. And this ended up being a pretty helpful exercise for me. And so I wanted to include a little bit of interaction just to get to know the members, and it's not just me sharing. So I had to pose a couple of questions for the chat if you wanted to think about, what limitations do you feel like you have when you're creating work? Or are you on the other end, you kind of need some parameters to move your studio practice forward? And then we can maybe give like 3 minutes or so, and if you want to put them in the chat, some ideas, and we can respond back.
I wanted to say that at one point I had endless time. I retired at 71 and I had a studio in Maryland, and a big studio at home, and I could just try all kinds of things and had no sense of limitation. Now where I used to do 5 hours of painting at a time or drawing or whatever, now my hands after 2 hours are, sore. The other thing is I only have small space now. I have small time, in that my sister and her problems in her old age are very demanding. And so I only have pieces of time, and that's a different way for me to work. So those are all things that come as change. And I know that they're not bad things. They can make things better or different. And anyhow, this draws what your questions ask. Yes, in a way I'm overwhelmed. I'm limited. I feel limited by my life, but I probably am self-imposing a lot of those limits. So I don't know, but it really is a good context to take a look at and think about.
Since I started so late, I want to do as much as I can. And, I don't have unlimited time. And I'm not so much overwhelmed with possibilities. I'm excited about it. I love using all different things. And, being just totally self-taught is kind of exciting for me right now. That it's kind of a conversation I have with myself, with problem solving, and and challenges and deciding how to do things. And I can totally relate with hands hurting and eyes being not as sharp as they were, but you know, it's fun. So I want to keep going. So I do.
Yeah. I'm going to keep moving the slides forward, but I guess for me, because I started out so young, it took me it took some perspective as far as like maturity as a person, and like as that kind of corresponds to maturity in your own art practice. And so in graduate school, I actually just narrowed it down to drawing. I was not really pursuing a lot of technical things, and ended up writing about drawing and essentially the creative process in general. And became really interested in this idea that what artists do is they kind of set their own limits up and then break them as they're working. And this was basically like a manifesto I wrote in graduate school. I wouldn't suggest writing a manifesto. I think that's not necessarily the most helpful exercise. It kind of surfaced organically in my sketchbook, but I still love to draw. Like if I couldn't do anything else, I would still love to draw. So this is a project I did called Powers of 10, where I tried to do 1,000 drawings in 10 days, and I ended up doing 500. And I still am kind of working in my own studio practice, still feeling to like make a pile of things. I'm a maker by heart, so I'm always making things and then editing versus coming up with a concept and executing it. And so with this project, I relied on other people to select the final ones for my graduate school. And I was just totally burned out. I mean, I just worked myself to. So I've got my sleeping pencil here. This was a show I got invited to do after graduate school, kind of a redeeming experience. And I learned over time, if you get invited to do something, have faith in the process and just do it unless it's totally shady. And then probably some of my best opportunities are like this one, where they've kind of come out of nowhere and have ended up being surprising and fulfilling. So this was a space in St. Louis that was a church had redone like a gallery venue space. And I started doing collages because I was up against the deadline, which is still true to my work. And at the time I got my degree in 2008, and I could have lived anywhere. I was not seeing anybody. I was applying all over. I really had a sense of like living wherever. And I lived in an artist's apartment while she was gone on a residency. And it was such a busy time. I just remember falling asleep on top of the bed and not getting under the sheets, just like working to like kill over. And so I got a job, I got a studio, and then I needed a place to live in St. Louis. And I lived in this carriage house. And this actually is surprisingly what's led me to my current work. So that's why I bring it up. And I lived over someone's garage and helped clean this house. And it was a kind of much safer situation than where I had been living in St. Louis before. And it afforded me as a young artist to live in a pretty nice neighborhood. But I also cleaned after a giant sheepdog. I mean, this sheepdog, the owner of the house didn't want to cut the hair, and it basically kept the roof over my head how much vacuuming I was doing. So as I was cleaning this house and caretaking, I think that's the other element too, and something that I feel like other members of Phoenix or in different life seasons are still in a season of caretaking of, in a way, that's kind of what I was doing in this house too. It wasn't just cleaning, but it was like taking care of someone else's space and being in that same space over and over again, in that sense of caretaking, has been something that has really kind of stuck with me. So this is a collage I did around that time period. And I've got these lines emanating here from you see these two rectangles in the back. This was a photocopy of an old fire map, like a historic fire map that I found in St. Louis And these are lines are emanating from my front door. This is a photograph that I took while I was cleaning. And the odd thing about this house is it was in this beautiful historic neighborhood, but it was a sad place. It didn't have nice furniture. We'd bring in these potted plants, and I still love the motif of the kind of geometric forms with the organic forms. We bring in these potted plants over the wintertime, and here's like a sorry folding chair. It was just like, so this image actually brings up a lot of emotion for me. And I think that can happen, while you're making work, you get connected to certain things that, because of the emotion that you have towards it, you kind of are able to express that in your work, where if someone else just saw this photograph, it wouldn't necessarily be that meaningful. So anyway, fast forward, I leave St. Louis. I wanted to put this up here, revisiting this project. When in doubt, paint the walls. The first iteration of putting up these drawings, I kind of got lost. And I'll put this up because this was another invited opportunity. I had been applying to jury shows, and I don't know if anyone else has been down that route. And sometimes jurors, they keep your stuff. You don't get into shows, and then you get contacted later. So stay positive. So anyway, I returned back to Columbus after a pretty epic project in St. Louis that involved scaffolding, so huge. And my carriage house flooded, and it was this whole, my car kept dying. It was this whole thing. So anyway, came back to Columbus and was just trying to get some irons in the fire. Showed work at the McConnell Center, and I was working again back with some old collages. And this image actually started from images from that cleaning up that carriage house, up the piles of stuff. So the owners there had arthritis, and the wife couldn't pick up things, and the husband chose not to for whatever reason. So I was kind of cleaning around piles of stuff. So and I've got the reference photo for this. Again, the space itself was like odd. There's the dirty rugs, but I felt like there's somewhere in reflecting the space, like thinking about what you want, that's what you would want to kind of like imbuing that space with joy and with a sense of possibility. And I felt like I was able to do that through making my work and still feel that way. So this is a collage that was from my carriage house. This is an image from my carriage house of these fabulous yellow chairs that used to belong to my grandma. I don't have them any longer, but they were, hand-me-down furniture. Well, let's get that one. So this is, again, returning to that motif. And yeah, so this was exhibited at the Cultural Arts Center in 2013. I had an exhibit there in that cavernous space. In preparing for that, I was did a residency at the Vermont Studio Center. And one thing to throw out there, if you're hoping to exhibit in more spaces, you're applying to things, is being like I feel like I keep being in the season where I'm always trying to put irons in the fire. Irons get cold, I'm trying to put the irons in the fire. And like when I was making this work and this body of work for the Cultural Arts Center, I did a residency in Vermont, but I did it in January, which was actually pretty fabulous. But thinking about opportunities that way, so you go and you do things when most people want to be there in the summertime, but because I was able to go in January, it was a little less competitive. And I make the food there. It was actually really great, going from my studio to dining, to sleep, to studio, to eating, to sleep. It was really fabulous. So this was during that time period. I made these, again, returning to collages and 12 by 9s. And the one on the left was a memory of my space growing up when we moved to Dublin. I grew up in New England. My mom let me paint the room whatever color I wanted, so I did it treehouse green, and it was so bright it reflected on the carpet. Didn't close the door, and my mom was like, "It's just a can of paint." So, and then the other image with the bike. It's my life now. I've got 3 kids. I've got almost 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a baby, with neighborhood kids and bikes on the front lawn. And so in an odd way, the work was a bit prophetic. Okay, so St. Louis, graduate school, and then all of a sudden I grew up. Some growing up. I got married, bought a house, I had 3 kids, and I have this picture of my husband. We were trying to pick paint colors instead of getting us, and we decided to just walk around the street and knock on doors. We're in South Bexley, and we just knocked on doors if we liked the paint color and see if someone could remember what they had. So this was someone's siding they had in their garage because we liked the color. So Brandon just walks home with a piece of siding for us to decide what color we wanted to paint our house. So that's that photo, just goof around. And then the other reason why I have this kind of bizarre photo of my little baby, who's now almost 7, crawling away, is these kind of images are actually what inspire my work. These really just everyday moments. The house isn't picked up, things are crazy, but if I wait for things to be perfect to make things, I'll wait forever. And I feel like my experience, it's not that unusual. And of having to kind of pause everything and then make. So here I am returning again to that same image. It's becoming more abstracted, and being able to return to the same images, again, they kind of allow me to add kind of whimsy to them, and they become my own. So this one kind of has a silly title. So I'm still doing a lot of drapery studies these days, a lot of laundry. So I've got an ode to that. And you'll see this laundry basket too. It's in my other work. And that actually means things are fairly picked up. Now that I have a 3rd baby, it's just totally crazy town.
So where's the drapery in that one?
So it's supposed to be a bit of a play. So on the couch, you see the piles of color. That's supposed to be a pile of laundry. So the drapery is a pile of laundry. It's a little silly. So this piece is called Amaryllis. It's a reference to Music Man. And I had an amaryllis plant, and the bloom is pretty, but I think the plants are kind of awkward. And I, for a while, just put plants in my work because I don't keep them alive very well. And in my work, they're alive forever. So that's what's going on with this one. And they have like this cartoonishly big bloom. So there he is kind of blooming over the piano. And music is a big part of our family. My husband, you saw, he's a musician. So I like to reference that in my work. So this is from 2017. And this was having baby number 2. So I had and they have less than 2 years apart, which was still kind of nuts. And this is when I returned to printmaking. So at one point I was a studio member for Junction View. And when I bought a house, it didn't make sense for me to rent a studio. So I could totally relate to how, like, when your spaces change, like your work changes. But I had been working in our new house, but I just needed I'm in my basement studio. This is covering pipes. But I still need another space to work. So this was a return to printmaking for me. And I became an associate member at Phoenix Rising Printmaking. And I still am doing this in my work where I'm in the same space kind of over and over again, but the space is just a backdrop. It's like a theater backdrop of everything else that's going on. And as my kids have gotten older, what I feel inspired by is kind of overlapping creative activities. So I have no, the house would look a lot different if I was totally in charge of the whole thing, but I'm not, and I don't live alone, and it's beautiful and wonderful, but it's just nuts. So this is, what's funny too, is the images are really chaotic. It kind of is more of a sense of emotion, everything going on. And this is when I just had 2 kids, and my house actually looks really picked up in this one. It's funny going back, and you're like, oh, this is a very calm time. So I did a commission for Nationwide Insurance, and it sounds like some people work with clients, and I had a fairly extensive background working with clients through the gallery, representing other people, and was used to a little bit more of the handshake process and had a sense of how pricing, doing commissions, and had a kind of a challenging experience with Nationwide. I think maybe the people I worked with were not as accustomed to that. And midstream, they wanted a bigger piece. And if anyone's done printmaking before, you know, my size was influenced by the size of the press bed, what I could fit through the press bed. And I didn't want to, you know, give them a whole thing on printmaking, but I was like, you know, they wanted me to do larger work without paying me more. I thought, doesn't work at Starbucks. You get a bigger cup of coffee, you can pay them more. So you could see, this is actually a picture of my plate that I was drawing. And so I had done the plate because my time was limited, and this was my solution. I just built almost like a puzzle piece around it to add to it. And then when I dropped it off, I brought my kids. I was like, it was just a really proud moment for me as a mom. And
Yay, good for you.
It's really challenging to be an artist and a mom. And I saw another member in the group trying to wrangle a human and participate in things. And for me, it's also part of my why too. So this is an image from that series. And again, working with printmaking, I'm not showing all of them, but I like the Friday afternoon pieces have repeated elements and unique elements to each one. I like to work really spontaneously when I'm printing. I've got a lot of color. This has got collage in it, and I'm doing different printmaking processes. Then that was this was the piece that was at Nationwide. And then fast forward, I didn't know if the members are eligible for GCAC grants, Greater Columbus Arts Council grants, or it's
Yes.
separate. Okay.
Yes.
So if you haven't applied to them, apply. I mean, they're just, and the deadline's coming up for this year. The reason I bring that up is I received a GCAC grant to reacquaint myself with silkscreen. When I was a college student, I took a class with some silkscreen in it and intaglio, and the guy who taught it was primarily an intaglio guy. And I'll never forget this. He was from New York, and he said, it's not intaglio, it's not lasagna, the G is silent. And so from that, he kind of shamed us into saying it correctly. Anyhow, silkscreen wasn't his jam. He taught it like in November, right before Thanksgiving break. So all I remember from silkscreen was ink in my hair. I mean, I didn't remember anything about how to do it. I just remember when I did it last, I had ink in my hair. So I did a GCAC grant to get some training with that. And I did a mentorship with Linka Clayton, who is a, I'd say her work's more conceptual, but she's an internationally exhibiting artist. And this was a series that came from that titled Trains. And so I was using transparencies. You can see I'm kind of changing the orientation as I'm making them. And again, like the previous work, using color to get a sense of mood and activity going on. And then the last thing I will say about this is it's helpful to have in your portfolio really some flat graphic work, because it prints well. It prints well in photographs, and it prints well in magazines. So if people can show them, they like to. They're fun to print. This is in 2018, Phoenix celebrated 20 years. And this is a video for the event that we had. That was quite a project. So it was a wood block that was 3 foot by 4 foot, and gentleman, his first name's Lyle. He goes around the country and invites people to create large wood block prints that he helps print, and then he has a collection of them that'll exhibit other places. And it was really a neat way to connect with people. Phoenix celebrated their 20 years, and I feel like I've benefited a lot from joining Phoenix and learning from other people's experiences, and then also helping the organization as part of my overall studio practice. And this is just a plug for printmaking. I love printmaking. We do, this is a plug for Phoenix too. So we do workshops and one-on-one lessons. We have associate memberships, and then we have core memberships. So I'm a core member, which means I'm a key holder. I can work there. And I also have some responsibilities with the overall organization. So fast forward kind of up to my current work right now. This is a piece called Nearest and Dearest, hope you can kind of get a sense of what's going on in the space. And then if anyone has done silkscreen before, each color is a pass with a squeegee, and it's much different way of making than painting or drawing, because you're kind of adding like a sudden flat panel of color. And again, like to work spontaneously. So I didn't necessarily have a drawing planned out for this. I had a key drawing that I referred to, and then I kind of continue to respond to the image, laying each color out. So it actually changes really, the overall image changes really dramatically when you create work like that. So I've got, here I am working. Now looking at the video, I know I had ink in my hair, because the way that you hold the screen up is actually with your head when you're working with the screen that big. It's just me printing. Silkscreen's a really physical process. So bigger work, you work with bigger squeegees, like standing on something.
How many passes of ink do you say you would have on that?
This image here has like over a dozen. It's a lot. Which is sometimes is a bit unusual for a silkscreen. because if you plan it really well, you don't need to do as many passes. But I also use this piece for my demo, my class demos. So I have, like I wouldn't tell anybody to go this route. This is not the easy way, but this was a way for, but as I like to experiment. And then, you know, fingers crossed, you know, toes crossed, everything turns out and your time wasn't totally lost and you have something really worthwhile to show for it. But it's kind of a risky way to work because it's a lot of time spent.
Do you have to let each color dry before you get to the next pass?
You do, but silkscreen actually dries really quickly. So it's diluted with alcohol in order to prevent the paper from buckling, and it also speeds the drying time. So that's why it's used commercially. It dries, you can kind of keep moving pretty quickly as far as printing is concerned, if you've got your screens lined up. Now, like with most printmaking, the work is all in the preparation. The printing goes quickly. In fact, it dries so fast that you have to do what's called flooding the screen, where you put ink back on the screen and it doesn't dry out on you. So printing's like quick, but but everything's all in the preparation. You have to have kind of all your gear and equipment out, because if you can't like stop mid printing to go get a pair of scissors or something because your screen might dry on you. So it's actually like kind of labor intensive to prepare for it, but the actual printing itself is really satisfying. It's really like physical. And the other odd thing about silkscreen is the ink is really goopy. It's like sour cream. So when you see a silkscreen, there's such flat, slick images, but the process itself is like real goopy. Emulsion's real goopy. I don't know how else to describe it. So, and physical, surprisingly physical when you work big. So this is an image I did, another silkscreen image. This one was more planning, and the image actually feels different, I think, because of it. I think equally successful, but the image is definitely more planned. And then worth noting on the top right is this silly lamp I found at the thrift store that I never managed to find a lampshade for. It drove my mom crazy. I mean, this is like a sculpture. Well, and then it's here in my studio next to me. I haven't managed to get rid of it yet, but anyway, so this is the image in situ. So I think that picture earlier with my room was very much picked up. This is a little more real life. Although the wavy lamp is not bothering my mom any longer. It's no longer upstairs. So really what I want to share my work, what I wanted to share here, again, if you just wait for perfection, the right time in the studio, you're in the right headspace, you have the right tools and materials, you feel like you have the right knowledge, I feel like you can sometimes miss the joy of making. And I really do feel as a teacher too, and as a parent, there really is a joy into just moving the materials around. There really is a joy to that. And it translates in the work too, if you allow yourself to engage in that. And then also the idea of time constraints. I get that. So this image is called interruption. So I just kind of embrace that in my image making. And so some of my images are a little chaotic because of that. These are, the one on the left is a silkscreen that I created part of that at Zygote Press up in Cleveland. And then one on the right is the closest I've really gotten to a self-portrait. If you look in the ochre area, there's me in the mirror. That's our bedroom. Most of my images are actually downstairs in our shared space. And then this is a painting. I'm primarily printmaker, but this is a painting I worked back into an old canvas. I don't know if anyone's done that. You're kind of like, what, this painting, it's just sitting around, no one's bought it, I can't get rid of it, you know, what now? So worked back into it, and this was a little bit of a relationship to being at home in the pandemic too, you know, home with my kids. Sunshine City is this kind of ongoing narrative that we have. Anytime they build a metropolis, they call it Sunshine City. It came from a preschool classroom that came over to our house. So this was like an ongoing narrative for, gosh, like 2 years now. Every time they build something with their Legos or with the Duplos, it's Sunshine City. And for me, it's this like narrative of, even within our house, we have a world within a world, and my kids feel like they have kind of control over it. I find that really, and it's this kind of idealistic place, Sunshine City. And then the last thing I wanted to share, I've got a show coming up at Black Fort Gallery. The opening reception is from 6 to 8. That's not on there, but I can share the information with Robbie. And anyone else who's done openings, I always feel like 7 o'clock is a safe bet. I can never remember when an opening is exactly, when the closing or the end of it is, but 7 o'clock, the party's going on. It's a pretty safe bet.
Which gallery is it?
Oh, you're right. That's not in the picture there. It's a Black Fort Gallery.
Where is that?
Black Fort is downtown Columbus. It's off of 6, right by Roosevelt Coffee House, in between Spring and Long. You know, really close to Phoenix. So it's within walking distance to Phoenix. Phoenix is off of 5th, which is pretty close to Bellymet. Bellymet's down there.
Mhm.
Thanks. That's a lot of words. I'm glad you asked questions in between. Anyway, does anyone have any questions?
It's not a question so much, but it's very refreshing to hear that as a graduate that you didn't rush into a studio and feel like you had to make 50 pieces and then go to galleries to be, to try to vet your things or to market your things right away like that, that you kind of juggled your life along with your art and made your art part of what your life is, which is what interests other people. So that's really refreshing and really cool. Those new pieces that you're doing, are you using fabrics or papers, or what are you using in this new series, the Reverie?
Oh, yeah. And I do want to throw in there too, I feel like the experience of being a working mom, of just kind of being pulled in a lot of different directions, is something that you don't have to be an artist to relate to that too. The one on the left the image on the left is mine, the painting with the trains, and the one on the right is my friend Elham, and she would be another. Her work's beautiful. She is, and she uses fabric in her work. With the figures on the right hand side. Her background is of Persian heritage, and so she uses reference to that culture in her image making, and they're just stunning. And so she invited me to do this show together, and so I was thinking about our work and what kind of overlapping themes we had. So this idea of kind of a daydreaming space, I thought would be an interesting connection. So she just started doing some silk screens at Phoenix as well.
The piece that was shown in your video that was posted up on the wall, the woodcut.
Yeah.
You did that woodcut?
Yes. Hold on, I want to see
The huge one? I mean, how heavy was that?
Let's see if I get to my. The
I think it was down further.
there we go. Oh, that's the video. You know, I posted progress images. I'll pull that up on my screen too. So
that's the woodcut?
this is the woodcut, yes.
Wow.
So on the left is my drawing, my reference drawing, and on the right is the piece of wood itself.
Wow.
And have you done any printmaking before? Or
I have, yeah.
okay, so
that's hard. That's hard to do a woodcut like that.
In my work try to, I let the work be really expressive versus being too controlled. So that for me, when you're carving the wood out, if it doesn't carve it perfectly, it's kind of part of the overall image. And I think that's kind of interesting about this one is I spent the time to get my image to print oriented the direction that I want it oriented. So if you work with stamps, you'll know that the images are backwards with stamps. Right. It's the same with a giant piece of wood. And so for some of my prints, I just let the room be backwards to what it actually looks like. But with this one, I really wanted that chair to face the right. So it took a while to trace the image basically onto another surface to then trace it so it was oriented correctly. And then I'll pull up, I'm going to pull out a Keynote and pull up my website to show the finished print. It's something I'm really proud of. And again, there's kind of a physical quality to working this large. I went to the woodcraft tool place on Bethel to get basically
I've been there, yeah.
Yeah, my tools
the
just
bridge.
weren't big enough.
It's by the bridge.
So I'm going to pull up my website. There we go. Do you see the image?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the image?
We're still seeing the PowerPoint.
Pardon?
We're still seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay. Let's see if I can do make stuff share. Resume share. Share. Oh, I'm gonna see if I can share screen. And okay, hold on. Here we go. You see it now?
Yeah. So how did you get your mid-tone colors in there? Did you paint them in?
So from the previous image?
Yeah, because you had grays in the other one.
Yeah. So the previous image is actually the piece of wood itself.
Okay.
And so that was me manipulating the wood itself. And if you do a large woodcut, what I did is I actually coated the whole piece of wood with black ink, ink, so that it mimics how it would actually print. So the potentially confusing thing about relief is anywhere where you carve is actually the white of the paper, which is totally the opposite of drawing. So anytime you draw or paint, wherever you manipulate is what you see. Or relief, wherever you manipulate, wherever you carve, is not going to be printed. So I didn't come up with this. This is something that other printmakers, smarter, wiser, more experienced than I do, and covered it with black ink and then actually drew back onto it with a white paint marker to figure out where I was going to carve. And so as I drew onto it with a white paint marker, that's why it's not a real strict black or white. But as you can see in this image, it prints a really stark black and white. And
I like that better. I like your print better than what you showed us.
Quality.
With the midtones. I like the black and white.
Thanks.
Yeah.
At some point I wouldn't mind returning to this block and working with color, but I'd have to hand print it to do big printed works. You have to have a big press. And the idea behind this one's kind of interesting. It's called Timeout Throne Timeout Chair. And this was our timeout chair. And I was interested in the idea that, with the timeout, said kid they don't have any agency or any control, but a throne is a representation of being in charge. So I kind of was playing with that. And before I got to the idea, my son had put our playroom and play mops on this chair, and it looked like a throne. And that's what made me think of like, oh, isn't that really odd? That a chair is somehow both of these things.
Looks like an electric chair.
I never thought of that. That's pretty harsh, but might as well be. If you ever had to put a kid in timeout, like, I mean, my children, I take it back, my children do not just saunter into their timeout chair to take a timeout. That's not how we, unfortunately, they're not as compliant.
So that's why there's a cattle prod on the floor too, right?
A lot of that. It's actually supposed to be a play mop, but if you think about it, it's kind of a harsh image, being so like starkly black and white. So
I'm just reading things into your artwork.
I mean, that's the role of the viewer, right? So it's your job. So we don't have those chairs any longer. It's just, well, they're really sharp. These really cool mid-century chairs. It's one of those things, you can become a parent, you have these really, you have some, you own cool things, you think you're a cool person, and then you become a parent to small humans, and all cool goes out it's toast. So even tonight I was like, mom's got a thing, I've got a thing downstairs. Oh good, now it's time for me to make art. It's time for me to pull things out in my pajamas and start stamping things. You're like, no, not now. I love you, not now. So but anyway, yeah, I try to think. I mean, I've got more work. I'm always making stuff, but I didn't know if anyone else had any other questions. I just got my website pulled up.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I love how your work is so spontaneous and like very playful line work. And I'm just wondering, who are, some of the people that have influenced you? Who are some of the artists that have influenced you in your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's such a good question. I feel like when I was in school, I could kind of spit names off, and that was one thing I lost with parenting, as I recall. David Hockney has some really great interiors, really fabulous color, really spontaneous. And there's another artist, I can't think the name of this artist, and it's never someone I would have pursued in school, not really conceptual at all, but kind of interesting. If you just Google the Norman Rockwell of Sweden, it's a Swedish illustrator, and the images are kind of like Norman Rockwell, or a bit saccharine. They're images of like his family in their home. And in Sweden, they came out around the time that a lot of images could be printed commercially. So they're very, anyone from that country would really know them.
Carlson. His last name's Carlson.
That's right.
We went to their home.
Oh, cool.
Oh my God. You've got to do that someday.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. It's funny because it looked like the home kind of goes on and on and on.
Not really, but
really, okay.
Every square inch. And the wife was also an artist, but he was more of an illustrator, and she was she did fabrics and colors, and it was incredible. It was well worth the trip. And yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I can't even remember how I came across, just on the internet. What I thought was interesting with both of them being creatives, my husband's a creative as well. He's more of a musician, and the tech guy, he's the tech guy, is that as an illustrator, he was doing images of his family and of his home, but the backdrop of it was like additional creative activities, like his wife's textiles were like part of his work. And that, to me, that's really inspiring, is these kind of layers of creative activity. The other interesting thing about them, and I know at least, is she actually designed, the wife designed things to like hold their plants. Like basically she would design it and then they were built, and IKEA borrowed some of them. So it's some of the concepts in IKEA are actually from there, which I think is kind of interesting. So, and if you, in pictures of my home, we go to IKEA. Just saying.
That's interesting because hardly anyone's ever heard of him and her. And we went on a trip and and when they brought us to this house, it was like, oh, ho hum. But then, oh my gosh, when you actually saw what he did, it was incredible that he wasn't better known.
Yeah, or he wasn't known overseas. I'd never heard of him either. And I don't really have a great knowledge of illustrators. I'm trying to think of, I feel like right now, like just being out of school, I feel like I'm really inspired a lot by like the other members at Phoenix and what other people are doing and making and experimenting with new processes too. I wish I had a more polished answer. I'm just so, just being honest. Any other questions?
Does Phoenix have like a group class or a kind of a field trip sort of thing that?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a great question. We do have like where like people come in and basically get a tour, and we set that up depending on what the group's looking for, whether or not it's something more involved, like a demonstration and a tour, or like a mini workshop. And I've been in the spare time, really, to be honest, my full-time gig is parenting. That's what it's like my full-time gig, and I'm teaching a little bit too right now, making work and doing that. However, I'd like to see us at Phoenix do some more playful workshops. We've had like a letterpress happy hour, but I'd like to see us down the road do not just like letterpress, but do like jelly plates. Have you ever printed with jelly plates?
I love them. Yeah.
They're so fun.
A lot of us do, I think. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So I had this idea that I need to come up with and schedule with the members and everything to do like a themed one where it would be like 70s inspired and it's like jelly funk. We just play funk music and work with jelly plates, or just play jazz music and call it jelly jazz, or jelly jingle with Christmas music. But anyway, do something and make and print at Phoenix. And so I really like printmaking, making the images themselves, but I like the kind of the niche part of it too. Not everybody knows how to, when you make a print, people don't always know how it's made. That's kind of part of the interest of it.
That's cool. I think that would be well attended. So,
okay,
yeah.
I'll keep that.
Let's do that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Now, as far as the members of the Dublin Arts Council, so it sounds like some people do house portraits and pet portraits, or there are people who are pursuing landscape. I saw some of your work online, Robbie.
We all do different things.
I think there's all kinds of, we love it when there's a show, a member show, to see the wide variety of what our members can come up with. It's fabulous. So that's one of my favorite things about it, is that to see a member show, you really get a big, whole inundation of what people are capable of, and why this group is such a good group that gives us an outlet to do that.
And some people are professional and some are not. Some are brand new artists. So it's really nice that, sometimes you can give them a helping hand a little bit, or suggestions for framing, or how to market things, or that's what the Art League's really great for, especially for beginners, to give you confidence and to know why a judge chooses certain things. So it's really a great tool for a lot of people.
Little piece of the info that I just read recently is that being older, when you get into an older age, you are more balanced in your left and right brain. And that's why so many people in their later years start out just get into creative things and are very good at it, because it all comes together then.
That's interesting. We have one of our new core members at Phoenix is older, but she was an engineer. Went back to CCAD, and now she works with Encaustics and is printing as well. She's over at 400 West Rich, and has totally embraced that. But I love her perspective. When we have
She's a
our
member.
meetings.
She's one of our members.
Oh, Dana?
Yeah,
Dana Drew?
yeah.
Yeah, so she's a member at Phoenix. She's our secretary right now. She's great.
I taught a class in Lakewood several times. I put it together, In Your Right Mind, and it's getting, and it was mainly engineers from NASA who were hitting middle age and finding they were having terrible times in relationships and needed to be able to fit in better socially. And it was awesome.
Now, does this mean when I get older that I'm going to be more I like my artist self, but I could use some more left brain thinking too. Does that mean I get better on the other side too?
You're going to get more balance, I guess. I
Okay.
don't know.
I'll take it.
Just something I read, and I thought that was pretty cool, because
Yeah.
I do have some older friends like myself who have just done some amazing things with writing and also with painting. One gal who was a retired doctor just showed me a painting of Brianna.
Okay.
That was it Brianna, the gal, the police officer that was killed in her bed, shot.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Awesome, an amazing painting she did. She did only a little on her own. So, hey, maybe.
Christine, thank you so much.
Thank-
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was great.
Thank
Inspired.
you. Thanks.
When
And
is the opening again? The 4th? The opening reception?
Black Fort.
yes, it's Friday from 6 to 8, and I can email Robbie the information for that.
Okay.
I'll just go ahead and email her. And thank you. So I don't always get an opportunity to reflect, look back, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful I had a chance to share. So keep making.
Is Blackford still like a group of artists working in there, having their little studios?
Yes.
We toured, I was with some group that toured that a few years ago. And I just wondered, because I thought it was just the exhibitors were the artists that painted or did their work there, had their studio there.
So the artists have individual studios there, and they do exhibit together, but they're also kind of entrepreneurial artists, like artist craftspeople, and then they have a rotating gallery. And I'm hoping to do more experimental work with this show, because Adam, I went to school with Adam actually, and he said you can sell work, you don't have to sell work. I've got interns, we'll paint the walls. I just don't want he just told Alham and I just don't, what he doesn't like is kind of a predictable on a wall. So I'm hoping to do something more experimental there. Should be interesting.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This was amazing. Very
Thank you.
inspirational.
Yes, I'm so glad I'm here.
Thank you for coming, everyone, tonight. It was good to see everyone. And Christine, thank you again. It was great to hear from you, see your work.
Thanks, Kathy.
And
Bye,
thank you, Bob.
everybody.
Bye.
Good